Sarah Martinez stared at the gray concrete filling her dream pool. $20,000 of pure spite hardened into an unbreakable monument to neighborhood tyranny. But HOA President Karen Westfield had just made the biggest mistake of her life, because Sarah wasn't just any homeowner, she was an investigative journalist who toppled corrupt politicians. And now she had 6 months to destroy the woman who'd destroyed her sanctuary. The war for Willowbrook Estates was about to begin, and only the morning sun cast long shadows across Willowbrook Estates as Sarah Martinez stepped through her sliding glass door, coffee mug in hand, ready to take her first swim in the pool that had taken 8 months to build. The crystal-clear water should have been sparkling in the dawn light, inviting her to dive into the cool embrace she'd dreamed about through every overtime hour and weekend sacrifice. Instead, she stared at a perfectly smooth concrete surface where her pool used to be. The mug slipped from her fingers, shattering against the stone patio. Coffee spread like blood across the designer tiles she'd installed just 2 weeks ago. Her knees buckled, and she grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. "No," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of her heart hammering against her ribs. "No, no, no." She stumbled forward, her bare feet crunching over ceramic shards, leaving small cuts that she didn't feel. The concrete was still slightly wet around the edges, the industrial gray surface marred only by the boot prints of whoever had done this. Sarah dropped to her knees at the pool's edge, pressing her palms against the cold, unyielding surface. $20,000. 8 months of permits, contractors, and dreams gone. Beautiful work, isn't it? Sarah spun around to find Karen Westfield standing at the gate between their properties, her arms crossed over her pristine white blazer. At 52, Karen had the kind of sharp, angular beauty that spoke of expensive procedures and rigid self-discipline. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her thin lips curved into what might have been a smile if it had contained any warmth. "You," Sarah breathed, rising to her feet. "You did this." "I did what was necessary to maintain the standards of this community," Karen replied, stepping onto Sarah's property without invitation. The HOA covenants are very clear about modifications requiring approval. You built without permission. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "I submitted the paperwork 3 times. 3 times, Karen. You rejected it every single time for made-up reasons. The reasons were perfectly valid. The pool's proximity to the property line, the potential impact on neighborhood drainage, the aesthetic concerns. Aesthetic concerns." Sarah's voice rose to a shout. "My yard backs up to the woods. Nobody can even see the pool, except from your bedroom window." Karen's smile grew colder. "Nevertheless, you proceeded without authorization. The HOA has every right to remedy covenant violations. You had my pool filled with concrete." Sarah took a step forward, her face flushed with rage. "You destroyed my property." "I restored compliance with community standards," Karen corrected. "The concrete contractor was very reasonable. Only $12,000 to make the problem disappear." Sarah felt the world tilt sideways. $12,000. You spent $12,000 of HOA money to fill my pool. Community funds well spent, I'd say. Karen examined her manicured nails. "Though I suppose if you'd followed the rules from the beginning, none of this would have been necessary." "I'm calling the police." "Please do." Karen's voice was silk. "Over steel. I'm sure they'll be very interested to hear about your unpermitted construction. The city takes building code violations quite seriously." Sarah stared at her neighbor. This woman who'd lived next door for 3 years with nothing more than polite waves and small talk about the weather. She'd never seen this side of Carintha, calculating cruelty, the casual destruction of another person's dreams. "Why?" The word came out as a whisper. "Why do you hate me so much?" Karen's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw and ugly underneath. "I don't hate you, Sarah. I simply believe in order, in rules, in making sure people understand their place. You moved into this neighborhood thinking you could do whatever you wanted. Your little starter home, your rusty Honda, your loud music at all hours." "I work night shifts at the hospital," Sarah interrupted. "I'm a trauma nurse. I save lives for a living, and I maintain property values," Karen shot back. "Do you have any idea what homes in this neighborhood are worth?" what I've spent maintaining the standards that keep our investments secure. Sarah looked around at the manicured lawns, the perfect driveways, the houses that all looked like they'd been stamped from the same suburban cookie cutter. This is about money. Everything is about money, dear. And people who don't understand that are destined to be disappointed. You're insane. Karen's laugh was like breaking glass. I'm practical. And now you have a very expensive lesson in the importance of following community guidelines. She turned to leave, then paused at the gate. Oh, and Sarah, the HOA board is meeting tonight to discuss your ongoing violations. The concrete work was just the beginning. Sarah watched her neighbor glide back across the perfectly trimmed lawn to her two-story colonial, every step measured and deliberate. The sliding door of the Westfield house closed with a soft click, leaving Sarah alone with the ruins of her dreams. She pulled out her phone with shaking fingers and dialed 911, 911. What's your emergency? Someone destroyed my property. They filled my swimming pool with concrete. Ma'am, is this a civil matter? Or they trespassed on my property and vandalized $20,000 worth of improvements. I want to file a report. The dispatcher's voice softened slightly. I'll send an officer out. Can you stay on the line? Sarah sank into one of her patio chairs, staring at the concrete monument to her neighbor's spite. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere. Officer Martinez, no relation, despite the name, arrived 20 minutes later. He was young, maybe late 20s, with the kind of earnest face that still believed the system worked. Sarah led him to the backyard, watching his expression shift from skepticism to shock as he took in the scene. Jesus, he muttered, pulling out his notebook. Someone really filled your pool, the HOA president, Karen Westfield. Sarah pointed to the house next door. She admitted it, said it cost $12,000. The officer whistled low. That's a lot of concrete. It was a lot of pool. He spent the next hour taking photos, measurements, and Sarah's statement. But even as he worked, Sarah could see the doubt creeping into his eyes. Ma'am, I have to ask, did you have the proper permits for this pool? Sarah felt her stomach drop. I submitted applications. The HOA kept rejecting them, but you built it anyway. It's my property. I pay my mortgage, my taxes, my HOA fees. HOA covenants are legally binding, the officer said gently. If you built without approval, ... So they can just destroy my property. Just like that. They can seek remedies for covenant violations. Yes, whether this particular remedy was legal, ... He shrugged. That's going to be a matter for the courts. Sarah watched him pack up his equipment, her last hope of quick justice evaporating. So what happens now? I'll file the report. The district attorney will review it, but honestly, this sounds like a civil matter. You'll probably need to get a lawyer. A lawyer, court costs, years of litigation against an HOA with deep pockets, and a vindictive president who'd already proven she'd stop at nothing to win. Sarah walked the officer to his car, then stood in her driveway as he pulled away. The sun was higher now, and she could see neighbors beginning to emerge from their homes. Some stared openly at the concrete slab in her backyard. Others hurried to their cars, avoiding eye contact. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number for her editor at the Denver Tribune. Marcus Chen answered on the second ring. Sarah, aren't you supposed to be on vacation? Marcus, I need to talk to you. How would you feel about me doing an investigation into HOA corruption? Are you talking about another series? Because the mayor's office is still pissed about your last one. I'm talking about the biggest story of my career, Sarah interrupted, her voice steady for the first time since she'd stepped outside that morning. Someone just handed me a smoking gun, and I'm going to use it to blow up their entire world. There was a pause. Marcus had been her editor for 5 years, long enough to recognize the tone in her voice. What happened? Sarah looked at the concrete grave of her pool. Then at the pristine house next door, where Karen Westfield was probably sipping her morning coffee and planning her next move. Someone just made a very big mistake, she said, and they're about to learn that I don't just write about corruption, I destroy it. She hung up the phone and walked back to her house, stepping carefully around the broken coffee mug. There were phone calls to make, documents to request, and sources to cultivate. Karen Westfield thought she'd won this war with one devastating strike. But Sarah Martinez had spent her entire career exposing the powerful people who crushed the innocent. And now, for the first time in her life, it was personal. The concrete in her backyard was still wet, but her plans for revenge were already hardening into something unbreakable. Karen. Sarah's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard, the familiar rhythm of investigative work drowning out the sound of her neighbor's sprinkler system. It was 2 a.m., and she'd been digging through public records for 6 hours straight, fueled by rage and 3 pots of coffee. The kitchen table was buried under printed documents, highlighted passages glowing like evidence markers at a crime scene. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Found something. Check your email. Sarah opened her laptop and clicked on the encrypted file her editor had sent. The document that appeared on her screen made her breath catch in her throat. Willowbrook Estates HOA Board Meeting Minutes, Executive Session Motion to approve concrete remediation for Martinez violation, $12,000. From Reserve Fund Motion, carries 4-to-1 note. Westfield Construction LLC invoiced for services. Sarah stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. Westfield Construction. She grabbed her phone and called Marcus. "Tell me you see what I see," she said without preamble. "Karen Westfield's husband owns the construction company that filled your pool," Marcus replied, his voice tight with excitement. "She voted to approve $12,000 of community money to pay her own family business. That's embezzlement. That's fraud, and we're going to nail her for it." Sarah leaned back in her chair, pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. "She never intended to approve my pool. She was planning this from the beginning." Gets better. I ran a property search on Richard Westfield. Want to guess what permits he's pulled in the last 2 years? Sarah's stomach clenched. "Tell me." Pool installation, hot tub, outdoor kitchen, gazebo. Every single one approved by the HOA without question. Son of a bitch, there's more. I found the original architectural drawings for your pool in the city planning office. They were submitted with a note of HOA pre-approval, dated 3 days before you submitted your first application. Sarah's hand tightened on the phone. Pre-approval for what? Your pool design? Signed by Karen Westfield herself. The room spun around Sarah. Karen had approved her pool before. She'd even applied, then spent months rejecting the same design she'd already signed off on. The rejection letters, the demands for revisions, the bureaucratic runaround of it had been theater. Karen had been planning to destroy the pool from day one. "She set me up," Sarah whispered. "She set you up, defrauded the HOA, and committed vandalism. The only question now is how deep this goes." Sarah looked out her kitchen window at the Westfield house, dark, except for a single light in the upstairs office. Karen was probably in there right now, planning her next move, confident that she'd crushed another upstart homeowner into submission. "I need to get inside that house," Sarah said. "Sarah, no, we do this legally or we don't do it at all. I need to see their financial records. If she's been doing this to other people, we'll get the records through proper channels. Discovery, subpoenas, FOIA requests. You're a journalist, not a cat burglar." Sarah ended the call and walked to her back door, staring at the concrete slab that had once been her sanctuary. Tomorrow was the HOA board meeting Karen had mentioned, the meeting where they'd discuss her ongoing violations. She grabbed her jacket and car keys. The Willowbrook Estates Community Center was a beige brick building that looked like it had been designed by committee and built by the lowest bidder. Sarah parked across the street and checked her watch, 6:45 p.m. The meeting was scheduled for 7, but she wanted to see who arrived early. Karen's white Mercedes pulled into the parking lot at exactly 6:50, followed by a silver Lexus and a black BMW. Directory: Janet Morrison, the treasurer, Bob Chen, the secretary, and David Kim, the landscaping committee chair. The only person missing was Mrs. Eleanor Vasquez, the elderly woman who lived on Oak Street and was known for her vocal opposition to most of Karen's initiatives. Sarah waited until 7:10 before walking to the building. The meeting room was set up with folding chairs in rows, facing a long table where the board sat. Karen occupied the center chair like a queen holding court, her platinum hair perfectly styled despite the evening heat. "Ongoing violations that threaten the integrity of our community standards," Karen was saying as Sarah slipped into a back row seat. "The Martinez situation was handled appropriately, but we need to ensure this kind of flagrant disregard for regulations doesn't happen again." "What exactly are you proposing?" asked Mrs. Vasquez, who sat in the front row with a stack of papers in her lap. increased enforcement, random inspections, and immediate remediation for any violations found. Random inspections? Bob Chen shifted uncomfortably in his seat. That seems invasive. So does having to look at unpermitted modifications every time I step into my backyard, Karen snapped. This community has standards, and I intend to maintain them. Sarah raised her hand. I'd like to speak. Karen's head turned slowly, her eyes narrowing as she spotted Sarah in the back row. The floor is not currently open for resident comments. I'm not here as a resident, Sarah replied, standing up. I'm here as a journalist investigating HOA corruption. The room fell silent. Janet Morrison dropped her pen. Bob Chen's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Only Karen maintained her composure, though Sarah caught the slight tightening around her eyes. This is a private HOA meeting, Karen said carefully. Non-residents aren't permitted. Actually, HOA meetings are subject to open meeting laws, Sarah replied, pulling out her phone to record. And I am a resident. My property taxes are current. My HOA fees are paid, and I have every right to be here. She walked to the front of the room, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor. I'm here to inform this board that I'm pursuing both criminal and civil charges against Karen Westfield for fraud, embezzlement, and destruction of property. Karen's laugh was sharp and brittle. That's ridiculous. The board acted within its authority. The board approved $12,000 to pay Westfield Construction LLC, Sarah interrupted. A company owned by Richard Westfield, your husband. The color drained from Janet Morrison's face. Karen, you didn't tell us that. You voted to pay your own family business with community funds, Sarah continued. After deliberately rejecting permits for a pool you'd already approved, that's fraud. I never approved that pool, Sarah pulled a folded document from her jacket. City Planning Office. Original architectural drawings for my pool, submitted with HOA pre-approval, your signature. 3 days before I submitted my first application, she slapped the paper down on the table in front of Karen. You planned this. You approved the pool, then spent months rejecting it so you could destroy it and pay your husband's company to do the work. Karen's hands shook as she picked up the document. Sarah watched her neighbor's face cycle through emotions, shock, fear, calculation, and finally, cold rage. You have no idea what you're dealing with, Karen said quietly. I know exactly what I'm dealing with, Sarah replied. A corrupt HOA president who's been stealing from her neighbors. The only question is how many other people you've done this to. Mrs. Vasquez stood up, her voice shaking with anger. Karen, is this true? Did you approve her pool and then destroy it? Eleanor, you don't understand the complexities. Did you, or did you not, sign this pre-approval? Mrs. Vasquez demanded. Karen stared at the document, her perfect composure finally cracking. There may have been some confusion. There was no confusion, Sarah said. There was a plan. Approve the pool, let me build it, then destroy it, and profit from the destruction. How many other homeowners have you done this to? That's enough. Karen slammed her hand on the table. This meeting is adjourned. This meeting is not adjourned, Mrs. Vasquez said firmly. I call for an emergency vote of no confidence in Karen Westfield as HOA president. You can't do that. I second the motion, Bob Chen said quietly. All in favor? Mrs. Vasquez asked. 4 hands went up. Only Karen's remained down. The motion carries, Mrs. Vasquez announced. Karen Westfield is hereby removed as president of the Willowbrook Estates, HOA, effective immediately. Karen stood up slowly, her face white with rage. You have no idea what you've done, any of you. She gathered her papers and walked to the door, then turned back to face Sarah. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Sarah replied. Tomorrow morning, I'm publishing a story about HOA corruption that's going to destroy your reputation and land you in prison. And next week, I'm filing a lawsuit that's going to cost you everything you've stolen. Karen's smile was pure venom. We'll see about that. She left the room, her heels echoing in the hallway. Sarah looked around at the remaining board members, all of whom appeared to be in shock. I need access to all HOA financial records, she said. And I need to know how many other homeowners have been targeted. Mrs. Vasquez nodded grimly. I'll get you everything. Karen kept us out of the loop on most of her decisions, but I've been keeping my own records. As the meeting broke up, Sarah felt her phone buzz. A text from an unknown number. Your pool was just the beginning. Back off or face the consequences. She looked up to see Karen's Mercedes pulling out of the parking lot, tires squealing against the asphalt. Through the windshield, she could see Karen's face, twisted with rage and something else, desperation. Sarah smiled and typed back, "Try me." She had Karen on the run now, but Sarah woke to the sound of sirens at 3:47 a.m. Through her bedroom window, she could see red and blue lights painting the darkness, emergency vehicles crowding the street. She threw on a robe and stumbled to her front door, her heart hammering. As she recognized the source of the commotion, her Honda Civic was engulfed in flames. "Ma'am, you need to stay back." A firefighter caught her arm as she tried to run toward her car. The heat from the fire was intense, even from 30 feet away. Sarah watched in horror as the windows exploded outward, sending glass shards skittering across the asphalt. "How did this happen?" she asked the fire chief, a grizzled man with kind eyes and soot-stained gear. "We're investigating, but it doesn't look accidental." Sarah's blood turned to ice. She looked across the street to the Westfield house, where every window was dark except for the upstairs office. A silhouette moved behind the curtains, then disappeared. "Someone set my car on fire. I can't say for certain until the investigation is complete, but ... double quotes, the chief lowered his voice. "We found accelerant residue. This was arson." By the time the fire trucks left, Sarah's car was nothing but a twisted metal skeleton sitting in a pool of melted rubber and glass. The acrid smell of burned plastic hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Several neighbors had gathered on the sidewalk, their faces a mixture of curiosity and fear. "I'm so sorry this happened," said Janet Morrison, still in her pajamas and slippers. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" Sarah almost laughed. "I'm not going anywhere." "But if someone's targeting you, then running away won't help." Sarah looked at the destroyed car, then at the Westfield house. "This is my home, my fight." She spent the rest of the night on her couch, watching the street through her living room window. Every car that passed, every shadow that moved, every creak of the house settling made her pulse spike. Karen had escalated from financial fraud to physical intimidation. The question was, how far would she go? The answer came at 8 a.m. when Sarah's phone rang. Detective Lisa Rodriguez from the Arson Investigation Unit. "Ms. Martinez, I need to ask you some questions about last night. Can you come down to the station?" "Of course. But I should tell you, I have reason to believe this was retaliation for my investigation into HOA corruption." There was a pause. "What kind of investigation?" Sarah spent the next hour at the police station, laying out everything she'd discovered. About Karen's fraud scheme, Detective Rodriguez listened with growing interest, taking notes and asking pointed questions. "You're saying this woman destroyed your pool, then had your car burned." "I'm saying she's escalating. Yesterday, I exposed her corruption and had her removed as HOA president. Last night, my car was torched. Do you have any direct evidence?" Linking her to the arson, Sarah's heart sank. "No, but the timing isn't proof. I'll investigate, but without witnesses or physical evidence connecting her to the fire, there's not much I can do." Sarah left the police station feeling more frustrated than ever. Karen was smart enough to keep her hands clean while still sending a clear message: back off or face worse consequences. But Sarah had never backed down from a bully in her life. She took an Uber to the Denver Tribune offices where Marcus was, waiting with a stack of documents and a grim expression. "I've been digging deeper into the Westfield financial records," he said without preamble. "It's worse than we thought." He spread the papers across his desk: bank statements, invoices, board meeting minutes, and contractor receipts painted a picture of systematic theft spanning 3 years. "She's been running the same scam on multiple homeowners," Marcus continued. "Pre-approve modifications, then reject them and force remediation through her husband's company. We've identified at least 12 other victims." Sarah scanned the documents, her anger building with each fraudulent transaction. "How much money are we talking about?" "Nearly $200,000. All of it funneled through Westfield Construction." "Jesus Christ, gets worse. I found this in the city planning archives." Marcus handed her a thick folder. "Original neighborhood development plans for Willowbrook Estates." Guess who was the original developer? Sarah opened the folder and found herself staring at incorporation documents for Westfield Development LLC. Karen and Richard. Westfield had built the entire neighborhood, then positioned themselves to profit from every modification. Homeowners wanted to make. "They've been planning this for years," Sarah whispered. "Since before the first house was sold. They built the HOA covenants specifically to give Karen veto power over any improvements. Then used that power to create business for her husband's company." Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Nice car. Shame about the fire. Maybe you should consider moving somewhere safer." She showed the message to Marcus, who swore under his breath. "We need to publish this story now," he said, "before she escalates further." "Agreed. But I want to talk to the other victims first. Get their stories on record?" Marcus handed her a list of names and addresses. "Be careful, Sarah. This woman has already proven she'll commit arson to protect her secrets." Sarah spent the afternoon visiting the other victims of Karen's fraud. Each story was heartbreakingly similar. Dreams crushed by bureaucratic rejection, followed by expensive remediation that enriched the Westfields while devastating the homeowners. Tom Bradley had wanted to build a deck for his disabled wife. After 2 years of rejected applications, Karen had declared the partially completed structure a safety hazard and ordered it demolished at Tom's expense, using Westfield construction. The Patel family had attempted to install solar panels, only to have them removed and destroyed after Karen declared them aesthetically incompatible with community standards. Maria Santos had built a small garden shed for her tools, which Karen had bulldozed and replaced with landscaping, performed by Westfield Landscaping, another family business. 12 families, 12 dreams destroyed. Nearly $200,000 stolen. By evening, Sarah had enough testimonies to support a bombshell expose. She returned home to find her driveway empty, except for a pile of ash and melted metal where her car had been. The city had towed the burned hulk, leaving only a dark stain on the concrete. She was unlocking her front door when she heard footsteps on the walkway behind her. Sarah. She turned to find Karen Westfield standing 10 feet away, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, her makeup smudged, and her designer clothes wrinkled like she'd slept in them. "Karen." Sarah's hand moved to her phone, ready to call 911. "Come to gloat about my car. I came to make you an offer." Karen stepped closer, her voice low and urgent. $50,000, cash, to drop this story and move out of the neighborhood. Sarah stared at her neighbor, shocked by the desperation in her voice. "You're trying to bribe me? I'm trying to give you a way out. You have no idea what you're dealing with. The HOA, the development company, the construction business, it's all connected. There are people involved who won't hesitate to what, burn down my house, murder me?" Karen's face went pale. "I never meant for things to go this far. The car wasn't supposed to happen. But you know who did it? I know that you need to stop digging before you uncover something that gets us both killed." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you talking about? The money from the HOA theft suit doesn't all go to Richard's company. Some of it goes ... elsewhere, to people who invested in the original development. People who expect a return on their investment." "What people?" Karen looked around nervously, as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. "The kind of people who solve problems permanently. The kind who won't care that you're an innocent journalist if you threaten their income stream." Sarah's mind raced. "You're talking about organized crime. I'm talking about survival. Yours and mine. Take the money and disappear. Sarah, please." Or what Karen's composure finally cracked completely. Tears streamed down her face as she grabbed Sarah's arm. "Or they'll kill us both. I'm trying to save your life." Sarah looked at this woman who had destroyed her pool, orchestrated the burning of her car, and terrorized her neighbors for years. And for the first time, she saw something other than malice in Karen's eyes. She saw fear. "Who are they, Karen? Who are you really working for?" Before Karen could answer, a black sedan pulled up to the curb. The windows were tinted so dark that Sarah couldn't see inside, but she could feel eyes watching them. Karen's grip on her arm tightened. "It's too late," Karen whispered. "God help us both. It's too late." The sedan's engine idled for a long moment, then the car pulled away, disappearing into the night. Karen released Sarah's arm and stepped back, her face a mask of resigned terror. "The offer stands," she said quietly. $50,000. But you have 24 hours to decide. She walked back to her house, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Sarah stood in her driveway, watching the empty street and wondering what she'd gotten herself into. Her investigation had started as a quest for justice over a destroyed pool. Now, it seemed she'd uncovered something far darker, a web of corruption that reached beyond suburban HOA, fraud into genuinely dangerous territory. But she was Sarah Martinez, and she'd never run from a story in her life. Even if this one might kill her,